when we do our review of businesses or underwriting, we look at 4 different lenses first, right? So we look at economic justice, who owns the business, right? Who has the opportunity to own? How is this business operating in its community? Who does it buy from? Do they have local suppliers? Is their supply chain focused on supporting other businesses in their community? So that's our economic justice lens. Climate resilience is another, right? How does this business integrate sustainability practices, right? Climate resilience in its own business, but does it have a product or service as well that's advancing or supporting the environment? Governance and power is the third. So how does this business allow for worker participation? Maybe in decision making, but in ownership, as well as community participation, right? Does the community have voice in decision making, and what are the relationships of this business to their community? And then finally, the fourth pillar is the enterprise health and the leadership, right? So when we think of the leadership of these organizations, sometimes it's 1 or 2 entrepreneurs, right, that are first starting, and we look for passion, the ability for this entrepreneur to execute on the vision that they have. Do they understand the market that they're going into? Can they adapt to conditions? I mean, we saw that adaptability, flexibility, resilience are most important in economic crises like what we had several years ago. The ability to maintain and build trust with their employees, their customers, and community. Part of our diligence is very relational, relationship-based, trust-based investing. So we look for the ability of that entrepreneur to build relationships across their whole stakeholder base. So that's one, leadership. Second, impact alignment. So we're prioritizing businesses that do align with those 3 criteria I mentioned, right? Economic justice, climate resilience, governance and power. And that's looking for enterprises that really want to create good jobs, high quality jobs that pay living wages in their community, that want to employ individuals that may not always have that chance, right? That we look at when we measure impact, we also look at who gets to work, right, in these enterprises. We look at it across gender, race, but also income levels, right? Immigration status. Some of our, businesses want to support folks that, come from, that are returning citizens or come from, sorry, I have my little dog barking at me.
We can hear
But that, want to employ folks that don't normally have the chance to work in some of these businesses. The other is practicing democratic governance. So some of them want to integrate participatory budgeting or practices that allow for employees to have more voice, right, than is normal. The other is, I mean, there's a lot of other ways to look at this, but a few others that are really important are, who owns the business? Is there interest in not just having one individual owner, but perhaps opening the door, right, to distribute ownership either through a cooperative structure or employee stock ownership plans? In venture capital, right, you always have an employee option pool. So encouraging that as a norm, but also other models of sharing ownership. It could be community ownership, right, that has some way to participate as well, especially in real estate. The other is we look for business owners that also want to innovate in how, whether it's compensation or other practices that are really entrenched. And I'm going to give you an example of that. But we look for businesses that are trying to change systems in innovative ways. So it could be, how they pay employees, how they structure their governance, like this idea of giving, employees power to decide, right, in a co-op, and redistribute power is not the norm, right? So how do we start to encourage and support that? And so the openness to go on this journey with us is really important, right? Having flexibility. And the hope is that, when these enterprises exit our portfolio, whether it's a loan and they pay us back or it's an equity investment and we exit, that they're more impactful from the standpoint of who owns the business, who are the workers and employees, to the impact it's having in the community, that they're more impactful than when they came.